Actually, I do have a thing to share about seeing Ajahn Chirasaro.
Oh, okay.
So I was quite tired last week, but I went anyway because I really want to see these monks. And I think it was very worth it seeing him in person.
Mhm.
And one thing that stood out to me is the way he speaks. It's like, in a way, it's like monotonous, but it's like a few words coming out of his mouth at a time. So it's not like he had a whole story that he like recycling every time, but it felt like he's just pulling out words
Yeah.
from somewhere, and it's like that for the whole talk. And I really enjoy it. I was very very tired when we were doing the meditation right before that, but when the talk started, I was able to listen to like everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Cool. Good. Yeah, I think that what you're describing could be the result of the way Ajahn Chah taught people to talk about the Dhamma. You know, that you really touch into the Dhamma as it is here and now, and let that be the motivation or the inspiration for what you actually say. And I can tell that all of my teachers, they do think about the Dhamma, how to explain the Dhamma. There are certain things that you'll hear them say over again and again. And yet, if there is that sense of being in the present moment and touching into the real sense of the Dhamma, excuse me, if you have that, it's very alive and immediate, which is good. So forgive me, I have allergies right now. The allergy season seemed to burst upon both of us and maybe many other people in the last couple of days. So there might be a little bit of throat clearing happening here. So we've been talking about the various paramis, the list of 10 that we have in our Theravada tradition. And today I want to talk about panya, which is wisdom. But I don't want to do it in a wholly traditional manner. There are lots of lists and descriptions in the suttas of what the Buddha meant by wisdom. There's one of my favorite suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya is in the Book of Nines, number 2. Many of you have heard me mention it probably many times. It's called Powers, or usually the title given to it is Powers. And the Buddha talks about the 4 powers and the 5 fears you never have to have if you have these 4 powers. And the very first one is the power of wisdom. And in that case, the Buddha defines wisdom as knowing the difference between what's wholesome and unwholesome. So that's a huge, it sounds simple, but it's so important. It's so crucial to our ability to live a happy life and to be able to make good decisions and to be able to train the mind. If we really don't understand what's good and what's not good, we struggle and take many wrong turns in life. So that's valuable to know. It's one way that the Buddha talked about wisdom. And of course, there's right view and right intention, which are the aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path that are under the umbrella of panya, wisdom. having that right intention of kindness and gentleness and letting go, having the understanding of Dhamma, knowing what the Dhamma is, seeing the way things actually are. The Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, in its entirety, really seeing how the Dhamma works. This is all wisdom. So the Buddha, really he identifies wisdom and the development of wisdom and living by wisdom as really the point of how we relieve suffering, how we escape from the dangers of greed, hatred, and delusion, the problems that come along with being a human being. So there's all of those aspects to Panya. And I have to say that, as I was looking for or trying to understand how to live in the right way, how to be a really good person, I was really wondering. This might sound funny, but it was like, what is wisdom and who has it and how do you develop it? That was kind of like some of my thoughts as a young person. And, it's really so central to the path, to the development on the path. And I'm so grateful that the Buddha made it so clear, how do we do this? So I thought I would just share one sutta with you this morning. And then what I'd like to do is talk about how does wisdom show up in our moment by moment everyday life? What is the place of wisdom in our thinking as we deal with the things that come into our life on a regular basis? Like, how does wisdom operate for you? So the first thing, though, this sutta is about how to develop wisdom. I'm going to share the screen. And it's also in the Anguttara Nikaya. It's in the Book of Eights, number 2. That reference I gave earlier, I'm not sure I gave the right one. It's the Book of Nines, number 5. I don't know if I said that right. It's called Powers, but this one is called Wisdom. And here the Buddha says there are 8 causes and reasons that lead to the acquiring of wisdom that are fundamental, the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life and to its increased growth and development once it's been acquired. So you acquire wisdom and then you encourage it to grow. And these are the things that help us do that. It starts with relying on the teacher, which is the Buddha, which fortunately we can, to a large degree, rely on because we have the suttas and the Vinaya, or a spiritual companion in a teacher's role. So that would be whatever teacher you look to. And of course, we've talked in the past about the kind of characteristics or qualities that a teacher should have, but I'm not going to go into that today. And then, so if a person has a teacher and then they set up a keen sense of conscience and prudence, this is hiriotapa, so the care about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and like you want to avoid doing things that are wrong, and you want to, because you have a conscience if you've done something, or if you don't want to do something that's wrong, and you're prudent, you don't want to have the negative consequences of doing something wrong. And it's kind of interesting because it says they set up a keen sense of conscience and prudence for them, this teacher, with warmth and respect. So you have warmth and respect for this teacher, and the conscience and prudence is you really care about what they think about what you're doing, and you're conscientious kind of with this teacher in mind. And this is actually something I remember Ajahn Jayasaro saying once, that, he, at the end of the day, could think, well, how did my day go? How was I behaving? Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. And then he said, oh, but what would my teacher think? And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, it has a different reflection on it. So this idea that there's someone in our life that we look to for guidance, that we have a lot of respect for and warmth, and then we take care, and it helps us to take care of our own actions more carefully, more judiciously. And that's the first cause for wisdom, to gain wisdom and develop it. And the second one is when you have a teacher and you have this sense towards them, from time to time you go and ask them questions. So what does this mean? Why does it say this? Oh, maybe you're looking at the suttas, or maybe there's something in a talk that you hear somewhere, or maybe there's something that comes up in life and you have a chance to ask questions. Excuse me. They usually come in a long sequence, so forgive me. We'll see if we can avoid that. So the teacher clarifies what is unclear and reveals what's obscure, and dispels doubt regarding many doubtful things. Or another translation of Bhikkhu Bodhi, he talks about perplexing issues, like not just doubt about doubtful matters, but about perplexing matters, things we really seem, like they're very hard to understand. So you go to this, this person, or even looking in the suttas for guidance, which is possible to find, some description, explanation, clarification about Dhamma. So that's the second cause for developing wisdom. And this asking questions is so important. We see that in other places in the suttas, that if you want to really learn, this is part of learning to be a learner, to really ask questions that are genuine and relate to our experience, so that when we get the answer, we have a new kind of little roadmap for how to change our approach to things, or understand reality better. And then the third cause is, it says here, after hearing that teaching, they perfect withdrawal of both body and mind. But actually the word in Pali that they're translating here as perfect it doesn't have to mean that. To me, that's like going too far, but it actually means to try to accomplish. So what you're trying to do there is take time away, quiet, that you can go inside in your own mind and contemplate. And you're also physically separated. So that's why we live in kutis. You can go into your own space And if you don't have a space that you can really be by yourself, maybe you can create one. I know, it could be anything, but a way to have time to yourself for reflection. That's the third cause. And then the practitioner is ethical, restrained. Here it's talking about monastics, but it's restrained with the precepts, whatever level of precepts we've taken. So the text says a mendicant is ethical, restrained in the monastic code, conducting themselves well and seeking alms in suitable places, seeing danger in the slightest fault. They keep the rules they've undertaken, and this is the fourth cause. But when we apply that to lay life, which is just as valid, we're all seeking the wisdom and we want to develop it. And in lay life, it's keeping the precepts, whatever level of precepts you've taken. If you keep the rules we've undertaken, this is what's important. And regardless, the 5 precepts, if we really develop them, it's a whole, structure of support for our life, for how we would make decisions about how to behave with body, speech, and our mental behavior. So this seeing danger in the slightest fault is a common phrase in the suttas, and it's really, I think, really beautiful. It's like, it's not about being perfectionistic or, having some kind of stress or anxiety around it, but it's really about caring about ourselves, caring about others, and we, developing the wisdom and the goodness in ourselves, where we don't want to do anything wrong, even a little. And then if we do, not to, be distraught about it, but to see how we can change it, correct it, develop. So this is the fourth cause for gaining wisdom and developing it.
I like the seeking alms in suitable places can be like right livelihood.
Yeah.
She has a job that's going to be wholesome, where makes being ethical and keeping the precepts easier.
Yeah. Someone asked me a question the other day about, they were looking for a job, and it's really tough sometimes. They were talking about, like taking a job that's paying minimum wage and, doing work that's not very pleasant and that kind of thing. And as they're looking for jobs, and I said, I think the thing to look for is to work for someone who's honest. If you can find someone who's honest and kind, even if you have to take a very, like beginning level job, then you've got a chance to work up, and that makes a huge difference. As a person's going to be fair with their employees, and you're in an environment where people are honest. This is very, very helpful. So again, this is kind of like the same thing, seeking your livelihood in suitable places. So that's the fourth cause. And then when we're learning things, actually remember them and keep them with us in our, remembering and keeping what they've learned. Oh, what's that metaphor? What, a lab person or
a bowl learner, a lab learner, and what's the other one?
Somebody else probably knows too, but
yeah, that sutta where it's like, when you're listening to the Dhamma and it just like falls, like you got an upside down bowl, like it doesn't even go in, and then you're not getting the teaching at all. And then it's like if you have like there's nothing on your lap, it's just flat, and it's like while you're sitting there, the Dhamma's sitting on you and soaking in, but once you get up, it's just kind of gone. And if you have a bowl that turned right side up, you can catch it all, you're getting it at the time, and then you can walk around with it and use it. Yeah.
That's a great visual.
It is in a sutta somewhere, and I might have the details wrong, so.
But that's the
Forgive me,
idea.
but that was the idea.
I remember the
Yeah.
lap learner, like,
Yeah.
you know, you hear it at the time, but as soon as you get up, it falls. And how many times have you know, like, oh, what did they say? And it's like, you know, I don't know.
It was great.
It was great. And yeah, so really remembering, really putting it to use. And these teachings are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, meaningful and well phrased, describing a spiritual practice that's entirely full and pure. That's a stock phrase, also a stock sentence that you see in different places describing the Dhamma, the teachings. And it's so beautiful and it's so true. In my experience, it's like learning the Dhamma in the beginning. And what do you learn at first? You know, maybe you learn about loving kindness. Maybe you learn about, you know, the sort of simple approach to meditation, and learn about virtue. You know, it's like already it's good, you know, and it's good all the way through. So it's really true. And then they're very learned in such teaching. So, you know, gradually we gain the knowledge of the teachings, and we also gain the experience of applying them in our life. And so he's talking about, as you know, we become very learned in the teachings, remembering them, reinforcing them by recitation, so memorizing and repeating, whether it's chanting or just, you know, having some quotes you like, or a sutta, mentally scrutinizing them, so really digging into them and trying to understand deeply, comprehending them theoretically at first. So this is the fifth cause. They live with energy roused up for giving up unskillful qualities and embracing skillful qualities. They're strong, staunchly vigorous, not slacking off when it comes to developing skillful qualities. This is the sixth cause. So this is the sort of positive side of right effort. And this is essential, right? Because we can learn things and know them, but if we don't apply them, what's the point? So really putting effort into, actually, I guess it's both sides. It's giving up unskillful qualities and embracing skillful qualities. So it's definitely the right effort. And to be real and to not slack off. And when we say that, it always is kind of fascinating to me that this is not about, you know, pushing ourselves physically overly much or even mentally, but it's focused on being continuously aware of the mental qualities we have and the habits we have, and continually sorting that out and turning towards and cultivating the skillful and giving up the unskillful. And it's an ongoing persistent effort that's required, but it's not like some kind of Olympic kind of marathon effort. It's like this is more like, you know, kind of a dedication to purifying the mind, which then leads to the purification of our verbal and physical conduct. This is the the sixth cause of developing wisdom. And then when we're together, I think it's interesting then. So when in the Sangha, and this means the monastic Sangha, but when we are together with our Dhamma friends, we don't engage in, so motley isn't a word that I would usually use, pointless talk or low talk, kind of, crude or anything like that. So instead, either they talk about the Dhamma, or they invite someone else to do so, or they respect noble silence. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no kind of, hi, how are you? How's the family? The Buddha always did that when people came. Things like that are fine. It's really useful to reflect on, when I say things, what's the point? And if it's kind of nonsensical or pointless, that has an effect too. And so here, to develop wisdom, it's better to leave that aside. And now the eighth cause, meditating, observing the rise and the fall of the five grasping aggregates, such as form, such as the origin of form, such as the ending of form, such as feeling, such as the origin of feeling, such as the ending of feeling, such as perception, such as the origin of perception, such as the ending of perception, such are choices. That's the translation here for sankhara. Such are these volitional mental formations, our thoughts, our mental activity. Such is the origin of choices, such is the ending of choices. He uses choices because there is that volitional part, like what we're aiming to think about or do. There's some sense of will in there. Excuse me. Such is sense consciousness. Such is the origin of sense consciousness. Such is the ending of sense consciousness. So all of these kind of, heaps of what we think is us, makes up us, and how that comes into being and how it falls away again. And the point here is the development of the wisdom of knowing that what arises ceases, which is oftentimes associated with stream entry. Like the realization of stream entry is often characterized as you realize that what arises ceases. The impermanent nature of everything in this realm, in samsara. And to develop that wisdom, that's really crucial. So the development of wisdom is often, kind of boiled down to looking at those three characteristics that are so common that we see, talked about again and again in the suttas, and we hear again and again from the master teachers, it's this impermanence, dukkha, and not self. The Buddha started out with that when he started out talking about Dhamma after his enlightenment, and he talked about that until he died. It's like these three doors, you might say, into knowing the Dhamma directly and being able to free ourselves from suffering. And that is those are the fundamentals of wisdom, to really see these things. Now the rest of this sutta goes through those same 8 again, but it talks about the way that our companions on the path will see us if we develop this and have respect and esteem for us. So I'll just show you the first one, and it says this about everyone. This venerable lives relying on a teacher, a spiritual companion, in a teacher's role, and etc. They set up this sense of conscience and prudence for them with warmth and respect. And then they have this reflection. Clearly, this person knows and sees. Clearly, this person who has developed this wisdom has a direct understanding of Dhamma. And when they recognize this in someone, then this quality leads to fondness, respect, esteem, harmony, and unity. So this is how the community is affected by our own development of wisdom. And of course, if we're developing wisdom, we're also going to be developing humility. And we're not going to think we're somehow better than someone else because we understand something that we didn't understand before, or maybe we think they don't understand. That's really, then we're really haven't gotten there yet. You know, we're going to have a real appreciation for the complexity and the challenges of human life, and the fact that there is no self here. If we come to a point where we have developed a significant amount of wisdom, we're going to know that we can't take any of any of either the accomplishment or the mistakes personally. We still continue to consistently and really seriously, and we might say passionately, develop the mind towards freedom from suffering. But it's not about the self. So now as we think, okay, how does this show up in my life? Like, what have I learned about the Dhamma? What is being confirmed in my experience with regard to wisdom and what I know to be true and what actually seems to work as I apply the Dhamma in my life? And, how can we address situations on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment scale with wisdom? Because it's reflecting on the problems we face in the light of the Dhamma, even when it's the problems that are just exist in our own mind. Like maybe we're feeling frustrated about something or angry or something like that. And then, like instead of reacting, take some of that time, if possible, away in the kind of seclusion that the sutta talked about, pulling away for a little bit and really reflecting on, how can I see this with wisdom? And a lot of times what I find is that when we ask that question, we're already shifting away from being caught up in a feeling. And excuse me, we also might find that kindness kind of comes in much more easily, because how can I see this with wisdom? Well, wisdom is going to have probably a wider context for whatever the situation is, reflecting more on what's going on with the other person involved, perhaps, kind of like really expanding our point of view. And then the very clear discernment around what in this is wholesome and unwholesome. Whether it's something that I've said or done, or whether it's something someone else has said or done. How can we really get clarity around that? And then instead of blaming ourselves or others, really with wisdom looking at what is the path forward to what's wholesome. What is it that we can change? What is it that we can do to inspire each other in a good direction? These are the kinds of reflections that I think we can use that are valuable. So I think I'm going to just let it rest there and see if you have any comments or questions or examples that we can use as our opportunity for reflection. Yes, James.
Thank you for the talk. It's very inspiring, really. I always loved about the Dharma from the very beginning is it provides so much that practically helps us in sort of everyday life, really, doesn't it? It's available immediately and to be experienced sort of straight away and stuff rather than later on. But I was discussing with my Dhamma friend the other day about how I found that, how do I put it? I think we were talking about right effort and ethical behavior and how these things sort of naturally arise as we practice. You perhaps have to sort of watch yourself carefully to begin with, but the more you do it, the more it arises naturally, and the more you sort of change without necessarily even knowing it. I mean, my silly example, Tim, the other night was that after I've been practicing for a while, I realized that I no longer had the desire to sort of listen to the sort of like loud noisy music or watch those violent films that I might have previously wanted to. And I hadn't willed this. It's not like I was like, I'm a Buddhist, so I shouldn't be watching like this Arnold Schwarzenegger movie or something. It just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a similar thing with wisdom, really, isn't it? It's I've always thought of wisdom previously as, you read a book, you learn, you remember, you write, and obviously that's part of it and everything, but it's something that sort of arises naturally as part of practice, just as of meditation and sort of thinking about things in the right way. And it's I think I'm losing my train of thought now. I thought I was but
this is great.
Yeah. It's just the small things, really. Sometimes it's seeing things in a better way. It's like, as you're saying, if someone's being annoying, rather than just getting irritated and angry with them, you can think, well, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're deluded, maybe they're not fortunate enough to have the Dhamma and the teachings of the Buddha to guide them, and you can sort of then you turn anger into compassion. I mean, that's so much wiser way of dealing with life and dealing with things, and it's there's just my heart's filled with gratitude, but it is the way that it sort of arises naturally. And the more you do it, there's that feedback kind of loop, so it just becomes easier and more natural. And I'm not perfected yet, but I'm on the way.
Yeah, it's great. True.
I was wondering just a little thing really about what you said about in meditation, watching the sort of rising, passing away, kind of like things arise and then they disappear. I mean, I've been noticing something in my meditation recently, and it seems kind of small, but I wonder if it is of significance, is that I've really been noticing when something sort of unpleasant arises, and I don't push it away. I just sort of, be aware of it, and it just slowly fades away. And I've been feeling this sort of sense of there's a sort of relief and calm afterwards when it's gone, and it seems like a small thing, but I have a sense that maybe there's more significance to that. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? It
makes a lot of sense. Yes, and first of all of what you're saying, I find to be so true with the practice, and sometimes some pretty major things that we've struggled with in the past we don't realize when it stopped, but it's gone, and we didn't kind of go after it directly, to try to change it, but it just fell away because of all the practice that we're doing. And it's so true. And that natural development, you can see there are places to put in effort, and it's not even, like I said, directly, dealing with something. Sometimes it's slipping through the back door, and it's like you're developing, and then these things change, we change. And this experience you're having with this unpleasant or whatever feeling, and then seeing it go away, your mindfulness of it, and mindfulness that, you're not adding any fuel to that unpleasant feeling, so that it has this opportunity to it'll just fade away. It's exactly what the Buddha said with his, bonfire with the 4 loads of wood. If you don't throw more dry sticks and grass on it, eventually it just dies down. Once we know that, it is a big deal, because once we know that, then we see that we don't have to add more. Well, we know that we don't want to add more fuel to whatever fire of passion or anger or whatever comes up, and that it will go away on its own if we just leave it alone. And it's true, then there's relief, and it's good to feel that relief. And I think even that process gets shorter as we experience it more. It's like then something arises and it's only there for a moment. Like the Buddha used this image of a hot coal flying out of the fire and landing on dry ground and just going out. That's the way it feels for an arahant. Some feeling arises and it's just gone. Yeah. So I think that is a very significant observation.
Because you start in small ways, and then you learn these things, and it gets better and better. It's I found a Stoic quote online the other day, and I think Stoicism has quite ties with Buddhism. It's Marcus Aurelius saying about, if you have a bitter cucumber, just throw it away. You don't have to worry. And I was explaining this to my mum, and I kind of feel like you start with just a bitter cucumber, and you can cope with that, and then it makes it easy to deal with something harder, and you can deal with something more difficult, and then more difficult, and and I guess it's you develop greater wisdom for greater things and harder things. Yeah.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Neil?
I was at some point reminded on the WhatsApp chat or thread or whatever it's called, Ling had posted something about a talk where it was said that mind is not a noun, it's a verb. And it occurred to me that could be applied to wisdom. We think of wisdom as something we need to achieve, but it's actually the achieving, it's the work, developing it. That's just a thought that popped into my head, that it might make it, because you think about wisdom, how do I attain wisdom? It's such a big, heavy thing, it seems like, but it's really just a process.
The other day I was thinking that nouns should be banned entirely, because it gives us this idea that there are things, but it's actually all processes. So I think it's certainly a process of, the development of wisdom, and the more attention we put on something, the bigger it gets. So seeing seeing what wise decisions are. And this is why it's so helpful to be around wise people. You know, we gradually gain, or recognizing in which ways one is wise, and at the moments when we're not being, applying wisdom. And that's helpful. So yeah, it's definitely a process. And I think both the comments from James and from you, Neil, are, helpful in, recognizing that this is not some huge, this is true. I mean, to not think of this as some huge insurmountable task, but rather is a process that we just keep going in the right direction, and it unfolds. Yeah, thank you. Mariah?
I wanted to make a couple of comments of thoughts that came into my mind from this, in light of a lovely talk that Ajahn Jayasaro gave at Ayagiri. There were two things that I felt related to wisdom when he talked about sati being in like Ajahn Chah used the drips of a faucet, and then a stream. Mm-hmm. So with faucets, sometimes you're toggling with it and you'll get a stream for a moment and then it'll go back to drips. So that's imagery. The other imagery he gave was that, and yeah, he's, as you know, he's so witty in a gentle way, but he said something to this older Thai woman. No, it's not you have to be Buddhist. You can, if everyone wants Auntie to watch a movie, you watch a movie, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't hold the charm anymore, And then in the talk later, he said, you've tasted the delight that can be. So sure, if you have a nice ice cream, it's okay. Like Ajahn Dhamma, he likes cream in his coffee. The trouble is if you're fretting when there's no cream, right? So I find that does allow, those moments do allow wisdom. It's where's the suffering? Where is it, right? And the courage also in this world to really stick to the precepts. Now, maybe many people here, that's very easy and good for them. But before I came to the Dhamma, I would be a metta type. I just couldn't hurt someone's feelings. So I would omit or not tell the truth, right? And you have where's the wisdom in that? There's a false wisdom, right? How can I know the past karma? So I think that telling the truth has far and when to omit and how to be skillful to avoid a situation where you will have to hurt someone's feelings. And you will have to, if you're going to tell the truth, it will be not a good time unless you take action to avoid the conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's something that that's a wisdom that that I try to reflect on, because in the outside, in daily life, when there's people who operate without sila at all, and sometimes well-intentioned, you really have to reflect and use the mindfulness. Like I'll feel my feet on the ground and I'll breathe and I'll relieve the panic of hurting someone for a moment. Just what would it be like what would that look like? The truth, the intersection of the truth and compassion, right? Yeah. So, and it really, the body shock, like asking him, I said out loud, well, I can't lie. And then one was, Arab and the other was, his native tongue was Spanish. But I saw them delight in that. It was so lovely. Here's this old lady who's got a car that whose kids want to get a safer car and so on. Then they worked within that constraint and explained to me the insurance process in a way I didn't understand it. because I just out and out said, my religion is Buddhist, and I need to do this within the truth, right? And that sounds so insignificant, but for me, that was a very big deal, right? I had the demand of Liam wanting me to have a safer car, and I can't show up, and so on. So I don't know that the truth, I feel, the taking a breath and looking at the truth and its implications is a very good playground for applying the bits of rising and passing away in meditation.
I would agree. I mean, like when we're up against real experiences, dilemmas, and then we reflect on, the commitment to keep virtue, because, like that element in the sutta, the virtue being there, that's so crucial to our development. If we fudge on the precepts, the mind is going to be unclear. We're not going to be able to really develop, the wisdom that is going to be liberating. Yeah. Thank you, Mariah. I think there are a few things here. One is, when we are navigating life, we're not going to say the right things all the time. None of us will. And we have to have the generosity and patience with ourselves and with others in regard to this. And, the things that we say that might have been, too harsh or too rash or just mistaken or whatever we've done, to have some compassion and forgiveness for ourselves. And when we develop that more and more for others too, it gets easier to forgive ourselves. We can think about all of the things that we've said that are good, that are helpful, that actually, and also where this, has come from. I mean, you love your son and you want the best for him and you want to help him. And, even if in a moment what we say, I'm not saying this is your case, but, sometimes our unskillful, if it is unskillful, speech may come from a moment of feeling our own pain or suffering or sadness, or our own desire gets the better of us or whatever. But it's still just, it's not the overall intention or direction of our aim here. It's like your real fundamental attitude and dedication, commitment has been to raise your son well and to help him along in every possible way. And to remember that, regardless of what we're doing, I feel the same way taking care of my mom as she was dying. There were some decisions I wish I had made differently, but I didn't have enough information or experience, or, that it's a very complex task. And raising children is a very complex task. We're not going to get it right all the time. And we have to realize that that's the case, and that even our mistakes are lessons for them. They can learn from that as well as from our skillful actions. And that's up to them to take, just like it's up to us, to take whatever we're experiencing and use it in the right way. Even if we see somebody do something that we're like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then there's a certain amount of, like I said, developing this ability to forgive. and to recognize that also all of this stuff comes out from causes and conditions. You know, even the way we act, there are causes and conditions behind it. And to acknowledge that, you know, there are, in the complexity of relationships, there are going to be times when we're not going to, you know, say the best thing or whatever. And we have to learn how to let that go. And to see it as, you know, this too is, you know, part of the learning. We are all learning. And it's okay. Putting our attention on all of the good that we do is better. You know, what's the percentage of the difficult times? When my children were growing up, there was quite a percentage. There was a lot of good. They knew I loved them. They knew I was really trying, but there were a lot of stressful times. And, you know, I know that it's hard to have this kind of change. But when things, what do I want to say, as they mature, a lot of times the love that you have for them and the ways in which you really strive to support them in what's good for them, that comes back to them later, and they really appreciate all of that. That's often the case. Even if they may, there might be some pushback now, it's more likely to blossom into some appreciation later. And of course, we're not going to count on it, but to really seeing, like you said, the impermanence of it with wisdom, seeing the inevitability, as you said, of they're growing up. They're also not going to say the most skillful things all the time, do the most skillful things all the time. Hopefully there's no real long-term damage that they create for themselves. But in terms of your relationship, at least the way I viewed it as a parent is, I'm never giving up. No matter what they say, what they do, I'm going to be there. I'm going to invite them in. And, saying we're sorry is a really good thing to do for things that we know we're unskillful. And that too is a teaching for them. And it's okay. It's complicated, and they will live in a complicated world. It's good to be able to recognize, what it's like to do the best we can do at the moment. It's what you can do.
Ling, can I offer you something from the world of psychotherapy?
Sure.
There's this concept in psychology called good enough parenting, and it comes out of attachment work from this guy Winnicott. And really, the idea is that good enough parenting is enough. What is enough in the world of parenting? And it's surprisingly low. I think people talk about it as sometimes 30 to 50% of getting it right, right, whatever that means. So I love that concept, because it just puts into perspective what it really means to be good enough or successful in parenting. And I can tell from listening to you that you are so above the bar of good enough parenting. So just to add that in.
Regret and sadness, like any other negative feeling, when we give it attention, it continues, when we give the thought of regret attention, then it has the karma to repeat. So what we need to do when those thoughts arise is recognize, have a way to say no, have a way to like, yep, that happened, it's in the past, I did what I could, and let it go. And what I've known for myself is that the more I see, yeah, if I entertain this thought, if I kind of give this thought any attention, then I'm putting in the causes and conditions for this thought to come back again. This is, we perpetuated. So when Ajahn Gana says, zero out the past, and that thought is that, remembering him say that also helps. Zero out the past. You don't want to carry any of that into the future. He said, Arahants do not have a past. And so it's like, okay, what's done is done, and just not gonna let that have any space. It's not a pushing away, but it's a like, just no. And then see, it's gradual, but it gradually just diminishes. But if the feeling comes and then we bring up the incident and we think about it, then we're creating the karma for it to come again.
Yeah, something that Ling just said struck me, and you're kind of commenting on it too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Ling, you said when these unwholesome or unskillful emotions come up, but I don't think we can say that emotions themselves are unskillful because they're natural. I think it's how we respond to the emotions that can be unskillful. So I don't know, Ayya, would you agree with that, or?
I mean, the Buddha talks about these states, mental states, as unwholesome. So, like, it's true that it's not like, oh, I'm doing something bad. It's just arising. It's karma. It's old, but to know that this is not beneficial is useful. And then we just, do what we can to like let it go. So I appreciate your point, because it's not like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. It's not that. It's like, this is old stuff. Yeah, Lynn?
I went through a period of time where I did a lot of rumination, and it was around my mother's death. She died as complications to the surgery, but I was replaying the events of the day over and over and over as if it would change something.
Yeah.
And Bhante Guttarantana had given me some sage advice on whenever I start to think this or have this repetitive thought, to go to metta, first for myself and then for my mother. But I found it such a helpful way to deal with this rumination that was just relentless. I mean, I would wake up sleeping and feel like I've been thinking about it all night. And it was just maddening. But I just really appreciate this idea that you could just break that thought pattern by giving it loving kindness.
Nice. Yes. Very good. And it's, like if we look at the sutta on the removal of distracting thoughts, even though the Buddha is talking about, these distracting thoughts in meditation, we can use the same methods. And that's the first one, replacing this thought with something good, hammering the rotten peg out by pushing in a good solid peg. And so it's wonderful. And then because we're not going over the incident again, we're not making new karma for it to return. So even though it might come back for a while, if we keep doing that, eventually it stops coming back. Yeah. Yeah, the Buddha had so many great methods. Thank you, Lynn. I want the two of you to be able to talk, but very briefly, okay, Mariah?
So my question is then, there's also a possibility of not good enough, right? From karma, because what comes into the child's karmic state when you start parenting. So I've been exploring, asking myself, okay, so what if it's not good enough? What I did for that constellation of that human being laid some bad seeds. I have to let go of that and forgive that.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that same kind of yearning and sadness with my oldest's animosity now. The question I have is craving, right, for him to come to Dhamma.
What's the question?
Well, my question is, do I need to let go of the ability that in some way I could maybe through someone else send him Dhamma talks, for example?
Yeah, I wouldn't try to, because I wouldn't try to do that, because you probably don't have the invitation.
That's what
so
I keep revisiting, the replay is
you're replaying in your own mind is your own business. It's not about him.
Yeah.
And his life needs to be his own. And if he's not asking for your help, then he's got to take care of his own life. And you have to take care of your own mental states. And
ever since he went to pay respects to Longpor, it's almost like I replayed this yearning. Oh, there's
let it go, because it's not your life.
Yeah.
We have to really be clear about what's our responsibility and what isn't. And we can't, if we try to reach over into someone else's life without their invitation, it doesn't work.
And that's the hardest thing about adult children, I find, is there's no longer an invitation. They're adults.
Yeah, you gotta let them go.
Yeah.
They're that's their own life, their own karma. They came from somewhere, they're going somewhere. We were part of it for a while, and then we gotta let it go.
I think that's the essential thing I keep ruminating in, the boundary I keep not, that I have to use all the tools of metta, that it's over and that's okay. Right? Like my role is over.
Yeah.
Unless I'm asked.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mira?
I'm here with the announcement.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. So this is a repeat for all of you who are at Sutta Study Wednesday night. But I wanted to let everybody know, many of you may already know, that the monastic community of KBV is going to be the Vasa this year. And they'll be sitting the Vasa from July 21st through October 17th. And just in brief, that's the range retreat, taken from the historical time of the Buddha. It was the rainy time in his India. And for the monastics, it's a time to go into deep retreat and noble silence. And for the lay community, it's a time to rejoice and appreciate the teachings and to support the monastic community with alms, so food and other things that they're needed. And also a chance for us, the community, to keep coming together by also taking a chance to relinquish something during the time. So like we're all practicing together. So I've taken on organizing or facilitating the support for the KBV community during this time. And there's going to be like an opportunity for everybody near and far to participate. And so I wanted to just say briefly, and there'll be something on the and excuse my talking because my headache's still pretty bad. But anyway, there'll be something written up on the website, I hope on the homepage. But for local people, there's an opportunity to bring meals to the monastery that I'll be coordinating. So you could contact me through my email. And to keep in mind that these guys will be in noble silence. So there's a chance to offer, and they'll be received with a blessing and then a departing. There's a chance for people who have been at the monastery before, spent time, and are fluent in monastery etiquette and kitchen, knowing how to really use the kitchen, who don't need any help from the nuns, to serve the retreat by spending time there and staying and helping look after things and prepare food and clean, and also lots of time to practice. And for those of you who are far, there'll be a chance to offer dana, and then local people can take that into the monastery. So like we'll be like the people close can be sort of the hands and feet of the people far away. So that I need like a group of local people to like kind of join the committee to be able to do that task of helping bring things to the monastery. So my email will be on the website, and I'm happy to hear from people so that I can really start to put it together. So as a group, we can really make sure the whole Vasa is covered for requisites for our teachers. I think that's my announcement. Did I leave anything out that needs to be said now?
Yeah, we'll try to make a page up and then make an obvious link to click on off of the homepage.
Okay.
A little blurby thing, so it's not the whole spiel, but yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.